How you get so much favor on your side? Accept the measure, Lord and Savior, I replied.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is Just Another Critic, continuing my Week 14 college football predictions. We got the Wisconsin Badgers and the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Minnesota 10-1, 7-1 in conference. Wisconsin 9-2, 6-2 in conference. Playing for Paul Bunyan's Axe, the longest-standing college football rivalry in the sport, but also playing for a spot in the Big Ten championship game. Winner of this game basically clinches their division and clinches a spot in the Big Ten championship game where they're pretty much going to be playing against Ohio State. Now, for those of you betting on this game, Wisconsin is favored, -2.5. Wisconsin 6-5 against the spread. Minnesota 7-3 against the spread. Over/under is sitting at 46.5. Quickly jump into statistics, and then we'll get into my own personal thoughts on the game. Wisconsin averaging 35 points per game, defense allowing 14 points per game. Offense is averaging 191 through the air and 250 on the ground. Defense is allowing 169 through the air and 98 on the ground. Minnesota, on the other hand, averaging 35 points per game, defense allowing 21 points per game. Offense is averaging 247 through the air and 184 on the ground, while the defense allowing 176 through the air and 123 on the ground. With that said, let's start this thing off with Minnesota, taking a look at their offense. I think by now the majority of college football fans have a pretty good idea of some of the weapons that this team possesses. Guys like Tyler Johnson as well as Rashad Bateman, who's a big-time receiver, is going to go up and win most 50-50 balls. Been getting good production out of the backfield from Rodney Smith, as well as some great play from Tanner Morgan. Very accurate. He's a pretty good decision maker. Overall, he's having a great season. Obviously, he did struggle versus Iowa, but Iowa is just very disciplined on defense. They don't give up the big play. They force everything underneath, and they force you to drive the length in the field. But like I said, overall, having a great year, 2,600 yards through the air, 26 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Playing very well. Majority of this time, this offense likes to operate out of the spread, RPOs, pretty much what most other teams around the country are running. You got your zone reads, you got your run-pass options, you got route combinations, high-low, and they've been executing for the most part of the season at a pretty high level. They've been very strong on offense at the line of scrimmage. They've got some big boys up front. They found a decent amount of success in the run game versus Penn State. We saw that. They opened it up again last week, going for 212 against Northwestern. So running the ball is certainly something they are able to do, and that's always going to be a big-time thing when you can find success on the ground and then eventually transition that into RPOs and read options. It just makes it harder for the defense to predict what you're going to do because really, essentially, they're not having any success stopping you on any front. If they can't stop you in the run game, they're going to have to stack the box, add more guys to that box, which leaves the secondary vulnerable to big plays, explosive plays, etc., especially with the personnel that Minnesota possesses at the wide receiver position, like I've already gone over, Rashad Bateman as well as Tyler Johnson. Overall, I like how this offense has been playing. I love how they've been executing. They've been getting phenomenal play calling from their OC, and it's been a great performance on a week-to-week basis for most of the year. We'll see if they're going to be able to do that versus one of the better defenses they're going to see this year. A very similar defense to Iowa and Wisconsin, a very similar culture as well. Wisconsin and Iowa, just very disciplined. Every man does their job. Stick to your assignment. And as long as you do your job, I do my job, we're gonna find success. So we're gonna find out just how well they're able to execute versus Wisconsin defense. I do like some of the matchups that they have from a one-on-one standpoint with their wide receivers and Wisconsin's DBs. So we'll see if they can take advantage of that. Defensively for Minnesota, it's something that I've talked about in the weeks leading up to this game, in their matchup versus Iowa most recently. I talked about how they have some vulnerabilities in this defense, and we saw how Penn State was able to run the ball successfully. Penn State going for 178, Iowa going for 117 with the running back by committee, and then Northwestern went for 127 just last week, going up against a Wisconsin team who that's what they do. Their sole mission is to dominate you at the line of scrimmage and just run the ball down your throat, knowing exactly what they're going to do. And so that's going to be one of the big-time matchup to watch out for, the defensive front of Minnesota versus the offensive front of Wisconsin. And who's going to win at the line of scrimmage? That's practically who's typically going to win your ball game. Outside of that, we take a look at one of the standout guys for Minnesota. I'm pretty sure his name is Anthony Winfield, number 11. He's a safety. He's been playing phenomenal in coverage. But not only that, he's had phenomenal open field tackling. And so that's going to be big time because we know Jonathan Taylor is going to get to that second and third level, and it's going to come down to one tackle, right? If you don't make that tackle in open field, JT is going to burn you, and he's going to go for a big chunk play or even make a house call. A few other guys on this defense that have shown that they can play at a high level, a guy like Kamal Martin as well as Micah Treadway. So we'll see if they can step up and answer the call. But they've got some guys from a talent perspective, but they're just going to have to put it together, work as a team to really get it done at the line of scrimmage and make some big-time stops versus this offensive line of Wisconsin, who is consistently some of the best O-line in the country. So we're going to see if they're going to be able to step up and answer the call. It's going to be a great game this weekend. With that said, we flip sides and take a look at Wisconsin, starting offensively. We already know what Wisconsin is. They have an identity. It's been that same identity for about 100 or so, whatever years, however long they've been a program. But they like to run the ball, right? They like to establish themselves at the line of scrimmage and then run play actions off of that. They have opened it up a bit more this season, giving Jack Cohn more sets from the spread. And so that's been helpful in really showing a different dynamic to this offense, because when they run into the better defenses, like a team like Ohio State, we've seen how this offense can come to a complete halt. So with that being said, it's been nice to see them work out of the spread more often. They do have some talented guys at the wide receiver position, a quick and shifty guy like Kendrick Pryor. They got AJ Taylor, who's kind of built like a running back, but he's about 6'2", 6'3", and probably the guy with the best hands on their team is Danny Davis. And so while they don't get a lot of reps, when they do get looked at, they are typically going to make a play. Obviously, their big-time receiver who they got back this year, Quintez Cephas. So all guys who can make a play, they're just kind of really in the wrong offense, to be honest. But that's Wisconsin. You know what you're getting with Wisconsin. They got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. They're going to line you up. They're going to run the ball. And Jack Cohn, a guy who's been fairly consistent as far as not making mistakes. That's one of his biggest assets and the biggest parts of his game. He doesn't make mistakes, right? He's a great game manager, and he typically is going to make the right play when he is asked to throw the ball. And so, kind of like I talked about, they're very similar to Iowa. Other than Iowa, they like to pass the ball more, right? Iowa is kind of seen more sets from the spread. I guess that's the only difference between these two teams. But from a discipline standpoint, very disciplined. They're not going to make a lot of mistakes. They're not going to make stupid throws or stupid decisions. That's kind of their biggest thing about their culture and about these types of teams. With that said, we're probably going to see probably 70 to 30%, 70% run, 30% pass type of split, unless obviously Minnesota jumps out to some type of big lead where they're going to have to be forced to throw the ball more downfield. Other than that, like I said, it's probably going to be 70 to 30 split or even 65-35 split. On the defensive end, at one point, this was, a top 5 defense in the country. They have struggled in recent weeks. Even in last week against Purdue, I was actually at that game, flew out to Wisconsin to check it out. But they gave up 326 through the air, just 50 on the ground. And then the week before that versus Nebraska, 220 through the air and 273 on the ground. And so it has been a struggle throughout these past few weeks. And if that struggle continues, it's obviously going to be a long day versus Minnesota, because essentially they're going to be able to do whatever they want offensively with the type of success they're finding in the run. With that said, we know what they're capable of when they're playing at a high level. Are we going to see that same Wisconsin defense this weekend? I'm not sure. Are they going to need that type of production? Of course, right? They're going to need their best this weekend playing in Minnesota. I do expect defensive coordinator Jim Leonard to have them ready and locked and loaded, but sometimes it just doesn't show up on the field. And so we're going to find out. They've played poorly in these past 2 weeks, but as I touched on, we know what they're capable of. And they've got some phenomenal leadership on this team that really has a bad taste in their mouth because of the way they lost to Axe just a year ago. They got absolutely throttled at Camp Randall. And so those guys, Zach Bond, who's an outside linebacker, senior, as well as inside linebacker Chris Orr, another senior. And so I think they're very motivated, and they're going to need to bring everything they got this weekend versus a very good Minnesota offense. As far as how I see this game playing out, I think we're going to see typical Wisconsin football. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to try and do their best to keep that Minnesota offense off the field. I do think Minnesota is probably going to find success on about, anywhere from 40 to 50% of their possessions. I just don't think the way that Wisconsin's defense is playing right now, they're going to be able to stop them on a consistent basis. But we could see something different. I expect Wisconsin DBs to struggle in covering these guys in man-to-man coverage and in one-on-one situations. But I do think they're going to do a very good job of limiting big plays, explosive plays, or even quick scores. But I think they're going to struggle overall to stop this Minnesota offense in between the 20s. I think we're going to get more points in this game than people might expect. But right now, because I do think the Wisconsin defense has less areas of exposure, I am leaning that way. Right now, I think Wisconsin's going to win this game 34-30, and that's just because I believe they're going to be able to get one or two more stops than Minnesota is of Wisconsin's offense. This is going to be a great game, and honestly, it can go either way. I do think Minnesota has the advantage of being at home. But like I said, right now I just believe the Wisconsin defense has a higher upside of playing better on defense than the Minnesota defense has shown. And so for those reasons, I think Wisconsin wins 34-30. And as I said earlier, essentially this game is going to decide who makes it to the Big Ten Championship. With all that being said, I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for listening to the end. Thanks for supporting the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any other opinions that you want to drop, just drop them in the comments as usual. With all that being said, you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, or night. This is Justin of The Critic, signing off. Peace.
His light shine the brightest in the dark. Single mothers know they get my heart.